Hello, everybody. I'm Pasha Marlowe, and this is the Neuroqueering podcast, episode only 2. And with my first guest, a dream guest, a bucket list guest, the only first guest I'd ever want on my new podcast, the amazing. I just adore this person, Eric Tivers, who is you all know him already. The host of ADHD Rewired podcast, and a licensed clinical social worker. I'm not going to do like a long bio because everyone's listening is going to be bored and they already know you. But also my ADHD queer motorcycle riding friend. So I'm so very grateful to have you here. Thanks, Eric.
I'm wondering if everyone couldn't actually hear me blushing right now.
Are you blushing?
I didn't
even say I like have a crush on you yet. Yeah, I didn't get to the blushing part. I am so excited you're here. Every once in a while, I wonder what I came out as. And I started coming out as bisexual, and then I came out as pansexual, and then I came out as like ecosexual, and then I came out as and the thing is, whenever I have a connection with somebody, it's all about the energy. So now lately, today, at this very moment, it's demisexual, or it's just like whoever lights me up and makes me laugh. How do you identify?
I identify as bisexual.
Okay.
I think if you look at the definitions of the different labels, probably like demisexual would probably be more accurate, or pansexual. But I don't know, something I think that because I spent most of my life in the closet and have just in the last year or so been way more kind of owning and accepting and coming out as bi, that it sort of feels like it's this thing that I've been holding on to so close to my chest for my entire life. And now I'm like, fuck that. Like, I don't need to be in the closet.
Yeah, I love that.
So bi is the way I go.
And so here's a question. Now that you've come out of the closet as bisexual, do you also identify as queer?
It is starting to be something that fits, I think, more as I think one of the things that I've been finding as I've been coming out more and more is just like, yeah, I think queerness would be probably the more appropriate like word. Like I don't know of another word to describe just the freeness that it feels like, where I'm just like, I don't care, whatever. Like, like I'll go to a fish show and wear a dress. Like, it's just because it's fun.
Go ahead. I wonder if by the end of this episode, you might be like, oh, neuroqueer feels right. Because I was where you were and I was thinking everything's fluid, right? Sexuality, gender, our neurotypes. And as I learn and unlearn, I feel like I continuously evolve and expand. And I mean, again, today, like my pronouns are she, her, hers. I identify as queer, neuroqueer. I identify as multiply neurodivergent, ADHD, autism, trauma, dyslexia, mold illness. I throw that in there because I know it affects my brain. But yeah. And so I feel like neuroqueer is this really cool, inclusive, expansive umbrella that allows me to see my queerness through the lens of my neurodivergence and my neurodivergence through the lens of my queerness.
When I was listening to your kickoff episode, one of the things I thought was really kind of interesting is the idea. I think you were maybe quoting someone that you can be straight and still identify as queer or be queering, which I was like, oh, it was just like, there is so many things that I'm learning from you, Pasha, that it's, I love it.
I think one of the quotes that Nick Walker writes, she writes, if you neuroqueer, or you're neuroqueer if you're neuroqueer, which I kind of like. It's interesting, like when I think about neuroqueering, which is why I really like the name of this podcast being neuroqueering. It's just challenging everything, and thinking about and questioning and reframing heteronormativity, neuronormativity, gender norms, all of it. And so it's really, again, just expansive. But yeah, you don't have to be queer nor neurodivergent to identify with neuroqueering or neuroqueer. But I will say there's a lot of controversy around that, because the queer community really does not always enjoy other people infiltrating their sacred, private, safe spaces, whether it's a gay bar or the identity of neuroqueer. So how do you feel about that?
As a bi guy, it's actually posted something, yesterday was coming out day. So I posted something on my personal Facebook page, which is the first time I had done that. I had posted stuff on my Facebook community, and that was more towards my audience versus my personal Facebook page. Um,
Wow.
and one of the things I kind of talked about in this post was, bisexuality, especially by men, I think are probably still the most marginalized group uh,
Mm,
in the LGBTQ umbrella. I mean, I've had I once had a gay family member say to me when he learned that I was learned that I was bi, he's like, Eric, if you like men, it means you're gay. Like,
like you're just waiting to fully decide.
right? It's like,
Yeah.
no. So it's like I have decided. Yes, I like men. Yes, I like women, and
Hmm.
yes, that can vary and fluctuate depending on the day.
Yes. And do you find yourself feeling marginalized in both communities, whether it's the queer community or the straight community, because you're in that in between place?
Somewhat, definitely not within the ADHD community. It has been nothing but a beautiful response in coming out. It was actually funny. The very first time I came out to one of my coaching groups, it was sort of like anticlimactic,
They're like,
where they were like, "Okay." I was like, "Wait a minute. I've been holding on to this my whole life. Where are the balloons and the streamers and the confetti?" And it was kind of like, oh, I guess I missed the part where it was like a big deal to come out like 20 years ago or something. I don't know. Like,
well, and the majority of people who identify with ADHD or autism also identify typically as LGBTQ or queer, somewhere along the spectrum, or at least identify with fluidity, gender, sexuality,
I've
fluidity,
heard
and
that with
neuro.
autism. I haven't heard that with ADHD. I've been curious and
Mhm.
wondering, like, what does the research actually show? I don't like, have you seen
I
the research on ADHD specifically?
I thought it was 60% is the last research I read about it, that 60% people with ADHD identify uh,
Hmm.
with the LGBTQ community,
Hmm.
which is interesting because I suppose that could also include people who are questioning or just like, or curious, which I think is great. And I just feel like that's exactly what neuroqueering is about, because we're looking at it through the lens of our ADHD or autism or whatever our neurodivergence is. We have this already sense of being more creative and thinking outside the box and not wanting to be stuck in a certain construct or follow rules that we don't fully understand or agree with. So I feel like it's all intertwined.
Hmm. Yeah, I just haven't seen the research. I've seen some of the stuff on autism and LGBT. Um, and I was listening to an interview on NPR a little while ago, and they were interviewing. I think it was a trans autistic man, and they were saying that it's probably the same amongst every community, except that people with autism just don't care what people think about them, so
Mm.
they just come out exactly how they feel. I'm like, maybe.
I
What do you
I
think of
do
that?
feel like, yeah, there's quite a sense of being at least for myself, like literal, specific, honest, to almost to a fault.
It's too much.
There's like, why don't you just sugarcoat that, please?
It's like,
Right.
wait, you're not supposed to say everything you think? What?
And it annoys me quite a bit when people don't say exactly what they think and do exactly what they said they do.
Mm,
Yes, I might cause problems in my relationships sometimes. But I also like the aspect of how we embody our neurodivergence. For instance, with yeah, autism, I definitely relate to the idea of like loud hands, and ADHD. I'm fidgety. I cannot sit still for the life of me. I love the idea of the more I start to challenge constructs and kind of embrace my neurodivergence. And even as I move through trauma, my symptoms and the way it increase, and the way I embody my neurodivergence becomes louder and bigger, and I'm not as concerned about how people receive it actually as well. Do you have that dynamic as you age and come out?
Well, when you were saying that, part of or my mind went was so I don't know, 20 some years ago when I started actually working with individuals on the autism spectrum. One of the things that I was noticing, and I was working in residential, so these were kiddos who did not get early intervention, had just a lot of challenging behaviors, a lot of aggression, a lot of self-injurious behaviors. And as I was working with these kids who I just loved because I had never seen behaviors as just like extreme, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was the best thing for my ADHD brain because it was like I had to be paying attention at all times if I didn't want to get like bit or attacked or
Mm-hmm.
um and so I really felt sort of at peace in that space. And I noticed things like, oh wow, when they have to transition, they have complete meltdowns. Like I hate transitioning. I have such a hard time with it. And then like I would see these things in them, and then I was like, well, it's different, but also really familiar and similar to some of the challenges that I experience as
Mm-hmm.
well. So, especially in the sensory realm, I
Yes.
still think it's one of the areas that is not discussed enough in ADHD spaces. Because I don't think I've talked to many people with ADHD who, when we talk about sensory related, differences, that like they don't look at me and it's like, what? I don't have that. Like
No,
so many people relate.
absolutely. And I think that relates back to sexuality and intimacy. I can't remove sensory processing issues from my experience with intimacy. I don't know if you're willing to share anything on your end, but for myself, I have difficulty focusing first. I'm very distracted. Also, it's it's definitely, there's something in me that wants spontaneity, impulsivity, variety. And I don't know if I don't think I identify as poly, and right now I'm not with anybody, and I'm sexless. So I'm like poly, monogamy, any of it would be better than what I'm doing now. But I feel like I'm monogamous at heart. But I understand how people with an ADHD body mind would lean towards polyamory or
Yeah.
variety. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think the variety is the spice of life.
Mhm.
So I'm in a monogamous relationship with a woman.
Mhm.
Um and which is totally kind of ironic because I didn't plan on that happening because I got divorced about I don't know, a year ago, 2 years ago,
Time.
a time.
What is time?
And 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 I the person that I'm with now, I've been with for almost 2 years. Um, we met because our kids both went to the same ADHD camp together.
Oh,
Um,
fun.
and I knew that she was going through divorce. And so when I was going through my divorce, I saw her on Facebook and I was like, hey, want to chat? Like, like it's middle of COVID and like life just kind of sucked because of, we're going through this divorce. We're still living together because of COVID. Um, and so I was just looking for someone to talk to, right?
Yeah.
And so we met up for it was a nice enough day where we were able to find a restaurant where we could eat outside. And it's one of those dates where it's like we met at 7, and the next thing we know, it was like 1 a.m. Um,
Ah, love
and
that.
yeah, so it's and we're still together
Yay.
um and what we I her and I talk openly about, it's like I have not had an actual relationship with a man. And it's something that I do wonder about and
Mhm.
I do desire.
Mhm.
Right? And so we talk about it. It at times feels hard.
Mhm.
It's one of the things that my last therapist kind of helped me with was sort of this idea that like you have to look at sort of all the things. And if you look at one part of your relationship or something that you feel is missing, like is compare that one thing to everything else. Right?
Yes.
So it's like
Yes.
there's definitely some, I think, maybe like all or nothing, like fear of missing out tendencies.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I am curious about the idea of polyamorous relationships. You know, my girlfriend is not.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That
so it's,
matters.
you know, but we're open about discussing it, and I think that
Mm-hmm.
that's, you know, to me that's really important. Just that
Yeah.
I'm open, and I can we could explore those conversations together, and you know, what's really fun is that we get to play in a way that's very open and but
Yes.
with just each other.
Yes, right. And that you can have these open conversations with each other, I'm sure brings you closer together, greater connections and intimacy. And I also really appreciate what you're saying. I relate to this, that you can identify as bisexual or queer with no, experience to back up your claims, as I will sometimes say, and that's enough. We don't ever have to have
Well,
an
it's not
actual
that I don't have
experience.
experiences. It's
Oh, okay. Because okay, got it. You're just not currently in
well,
a
so
relationship.
I have not had a what I would say a romantic.
Okay,
It's been all sexual.
got it.
Yeah, and I, you know, my sexual experiences were strikingly young when I started.
Mhm.
And yeah, and my first sexual experiences were with other boys, like when I was a kid.
Mhm.
I was always very curious, and
Mhm.
it's kind of mind blowing to me too, because like I already had experiences at the time I was my son's age, and he's 11,
Mm. Yes.
and I was like, wait, like what?
Hmm.
How did what? How did that happen?
It's because we were raised in the '70s and our parents didn't know where we were.
That's what I was saying. I'm
We
like,
were
where are my
drinking out of
parents?
rusty hoses and yeah,
I
so
was
they
like,
didn't.
why did they think that having an actual bed in the basement was a good idea? Because oh man, was that used?
The
Um,
basement bed. Oh, I relate to that.
no, but it was. I'll tell you, my part of, and I've been working through a lot of this over the last couple of years, going through my divorce,
Mm,
is how just different I think my life would have turned out if when I had come out to my parents, if it went differently.
mhm,
So when I was 14, I told my parents that I think I'm bi,
mm,
and my mom's response was, "Well, maybe it's a phase." My dad's response was, he came home the next day with a Playboy magazine,
mhm,
which told me two things: one, that he
mhm.
didn't wasn't accepting of this, and two, he
Yes.
didn't understand what I meant by bi. Because I was like, "Thanks,
Yes.
Dad. Like, this is great
I'm
too."
not gonna change anything.
um, and I remember being a kid, and having one of my friends. We'd always get into his dad's porn stash, and he had Playboy and Penthouse. So I was like, oh, I wish it was Penthouse because I had men in it too.
Oh, okay. Oh, you know everything about this.
Yeah,
Awesome.
and yes, I did read the Playboy articles.
The articles.
I did. I'm telling you, they were great.
You're such a Playboy nerd.
Do you know that Shel Silverstein was a contributing author to in Playboy?
Really?
He's a
Were
dirty
any of his
bastard.
poems actually about sex? And I thought they were about
Name.
turtles or
Think about
bubblegum or
what's
something.
that one the one poem where the guy forgot to wear his pants out?
Yeah, was that like somebody with indecent exposure?
Something.
Oh, and wow. All right. I had no idea. It took me a long time. I started learning about, like Dr. Seuss stories didn't, or meant more than I understood. Now Shel
Mhm.
Silverstein, and you're like, don't tell me Mr. Rogers is not pure because I will be so
Oh,
upset.
I love Mr.
Okay.
Rogers.
Okay.
He
Don't
was
burst
like
that.
my second dad.
Okay. I had Mr. Rogers. Well, actually, I had Charles Ingalls. Yeah. But, Little House on the Prairie. Yeah.
I don't. Um.
Except that I was into Caroline. but
I,
so you've been coming out for a long time. I just recently, like 3 years now,
well,
came out.
but after that response, I kind of like retreated back into the closet,
Right. Right.
And I mean, you remember, I think I was 16, and um, telling, I think my parents, I'm like, yeah, I think it was just a phase, like knowing full well that like this was not a phase. I just like I was not comfortable with how they felt about it. And
So you had
um
an ask.
yeah, and now like and the person that I married and was married to for almost 11 years was, kind of in hindsight, I realized I married someone that my parents would approve of, which is
Mm-hmm.
like so heartbreaking to me now. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's like I didn't realize that at the time, right? It
Yeah.
was sort of like it was what I kind of needed at that time in my life.
Yes.
But I grew and changed, and and she didn't,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I did not want to be in an unhappy relationship. I saw my parents who are still married 50 years,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't remember any of those years being happy for them.
Yeah. Well,
You
that's
know,
very brave. It's
yeah,
brave. It's brave to know when it's the right time to go, right?
yeah.
Um, do you feel like coming out neurodivergent and has a similar storyline for people as coming out queer?
It was interesting because I'm very open and just about my own ADHD experience, the podcast and everything else. It felt really like uncomfortable for me because I was in a sense playing the role of an ally for so many years.
Mm-hmm.
Um and it just it felt so inauthentic to me,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so it just feels great to not have to be inauthentic anymore
Yeah.
about that.
Yes. And I agree with you that the ADHD community, the autism community as well, is incredibly open-minded, open-hearted, and you're right, it's very anticlimactic coming out. And it's very I just this it's like beyond a sense of belonging. And when you mentioned your parents, I was like, oh, it's something else. And maybe I don't know the word for it yet, but that wanting to be seen uh, and appreciated and understood, that feeling that we want from our
Oh, we
parents that we'll
want to
never
show up as
get.
our whole self.
Yeah. That's the feeling I get in
I don't remember
ADHD
where
spaces.
I heard this. I came upon this idea recently. The idea that, I'm in a monogamous relationship with a woman, but we're still in a queer relationship. And so that idea is a new idea to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so because it's, 'cause it is a queer relationship. I mean, and it's
Is she okay with that
I think so.
label? Okay. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. And what do you think about your understanding and experience with gender and gender norms through the lens of queerness or neurodivergence?
Yeah, so, I've always kind of been, I guess, somewhat of a feminine person.
Mhm.
Um, I had 2 older sisters, and, when I there's a story that when I was a little kid, I used to think that when I grew up, I would be a girl
Mhm.
because that's what my sisters were. Um, it's funny, I don't know if I identify as much with, um, the idea of, trans or, being female, but I also identify very much in that way at the same time,
Yes. Yeah.
right? Like,
Mhm.
because it's like, I mean, I'm a man, and yet I'm a very sort of feminine man. I don't know, like, I'm very much in touch with my emotions. I don't care what I look like. I'm not trying to stuff my emotions. I'm not like, if I don't like getting hurt, it's like things that are very typical, like man kind of stuff. Like,
Mhm.
is that kind of gross?
Mhm.
Like that,
Mhm. Same. Mhm.
that like overly sort of like high testosterone kind of like,
Mhm.
so I love playing pickleball. There's an area by me where there's some really competitive pickleball play, and it's open play. But these
Okay.
are like they're really good players. And while I like the competition there, it's like feels like a frat club, and
Uh-huh.
which is just like, you just get over yourself. Like,
You don't
it,
resonate with that.
yeah, I know. I remember being in grad school, and one of my courses. during one of our discussions, another student in the class asked me, like, does it ever feel weird to you that you're the only man in the class? Which I then looked around and realized that, oh, I am I actually didn't even notice that.
That's fantastic. I love that. Well, if gender is just a social construct, then and we're unmasking and we're just being our whole selves. And why do we care what gender, is for ourselves and others? I don't know. Yeah,
And I do wonder too
so
if, like,
fascinating.
have I not necessarily latched onto the idea of of like trans or fluidity, just because I was like in the closet for so long. I don't know, like,
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, I don't know if I have I don't think I've fully developed thoughts around it, but there's
Mm-hmm.
definitely feelings around it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I think it's something that I'm still kind of exploring.
Which
You
is
know,
so cool. Which
yeah,
yeah, which is the art of neuroqueering. You're like
right.
still exploring. That's why I say like today I identify, tomorrow might be completely different.
Like I love that. Like
It's-
when over the summer, my girlfriend and I we went to see Fish, the band Fish, because I've seen them a couple times, like almost 50.
oh
And
gosh.
And so
That's
and one of the days that we were there, like I was wearing a dress the whole time, and we were
Oh,
together, and like she was great with it, you know. So it's like
oh, fantastic.
it's lovely.
Yeah.
I have a bucket list called I would love to be in a drag show. Like to me, that just sounds fun.
Yes. And you just bought a motorcycle.
Uh-huh.
So like you're that which might be stereotypically masculine.
Right.
Just curious. What do you call it? You call it like riding a hog? What do you call it? I don't know. I don't know motorcycle terms.
I call it riding a bike. I mean the
A
whole like
bike. Okay.
the whole like machismo part of
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
not into that. Like
So there's like bikers and riders, but you're riding a bike, but that's different than a road bike. So, okay.
right. So and it's funny too that I have it in my Amazon cart. There's these fantastic helmet covers that make your helmet look like you're a Muppet. It, and I'm pretty sure I'm gonna buy it. It's only like
Wait, there's hair,
$40.
like fur coming out of it?
Uh-huh.
Oh yeah,
They're
definitely buy that.
fantastic. Like I saw someone riding one and I was like, what is like that's amazing.
Like
Like,
multicolors?
uh-huh.
Definitely buy that.
And in addition from it being fun and sort of head turning, being on a motorcycle is a good thing if you have something that's head turning because then people notice you. Which is
Absolutely. Plus, you could be a Muppet.
plus that can be a Muppet.
Hey, that's fluid. A Muppet.
You
My
know what?
sexuality is Muppet now.
When we're when we actually meet in person, I'll have to do my Grover impression. I think it's
Aw.
pretty good. The whole near and far skit.
Oh, yeah,
I
I'll
can do it.
definitely like to see
I can
that.
do it.
I tried to get the rights, which didn't work, to Kermit's song. Why are there so many songs about rainbows? Because I was thinking, what a great intro and outro to
Oh.
this podcast. Can
So
you sing?
why didn't
You
you do
can
that?
sing. You could sing and play the piano. You could do an original.
I can kind of do a Kermit the Frog impression
Oh,
too.
yes.
Kermit the
Just
Frog here.
oh my goodness. Can you sing a line
I
from
don't
that
know. I haven't
song?
tried to sing in that voice.
Hmm.
Maybe another time.
Okay. Isn't it interesting? This is what I love about neurodiverse spaces, because I cannot walk into a neurotypical space and then honestly, like I'm like giddy and I have goosebumps all over my body just thinking about the Muppets and that helmet and you riding down the highway and then singing and like coming out to meet you and you doing the Grover impression. Like that feels like living to me. Like that feels alive. But the rest of the day, I feel like dead inside because I don't have these type of interactions. And so, yeah, I love it. Do you know what I mean?
I do. It's one of the funnier things my ex-wife said once. Um, I was saying, how there's all these different communities. There's, so we live in the Chicago area, so there's a lot of different sort of ethnic communities. There's LGBT communities, like physically, like, but there's not really any like physically located neurodivergent communities. And she goes, like an institution.
Oh, great. Thanks.
Well, she was a bit neurodivergent as well. She was OCD and other sensory
Yes.
stuff. But I was like, well, what if we find a place and we can just call it Institution Island?
The new reality. We are thinking alike, because I literally went to somebody who's whatever copyright trademark thing lawyer, because I wanted to create neurodiverse cities, like CITY, where cities would brand themselves as neurodiverse friendly, and within those spaces there'd be, theater sensitive to sensory issues, and museums that were open to, like, autistic days where we just had, less noise or lights or whatever. And I was like, this, and then I was trying to figure out what city, and I went way down the rabbit hole in this, and I still think it's a cool idea. And so now I just blurted it out, and somebody's going to do it. Well, that's fine. Somebody should do it, but then just coin me in it.
Well, when we go to the international conferences in ADHD, it's like a neurodivergent city for a weekend.
For a weekend. I know. I haven't done it live. I know you're trying to talk me into it, and I might.
Yes.
I
Can I
don't know.
can I continue to try to talk you into it? Because
It's in Texas, and
I know.
politics and social justice
You
get
don't
in the
have to get into
way of me
I
wanting.
know.
It's just like not wanting to necessarily, put my money there right now.
Well, what if
But
we just go there and become obnoxiously queer as fuck?
that would be fun. That would be fun. Yeah,
We
mess
can
things up.
go visit the Capitol. I'll dress in drag for that.
How can we queer up Dallas? Yes. Dallas is actually, my daughter lived there for a short while when she was first hired with Microsoft, and I did visit Dallas last year, or maybe the year before. And it was a very queer friendly city. So not dissing Dallas, just maybe Texan
I would love to go to Austin
politicians.
because of the music.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So now, see, you're just the kind of person who I could just talk on and on and on with, but then I have to remember that people are listening and, might want us to get to a point that relates to them and not just our lives. So would you have any advice for somebody who's neurodivergent and queer in terms of coming out or finding community or safe spaces to embody all that they are, and in that whole body or whole body mind self?
Finding community, I think, is just so important.
Mhm.
It's when in my coaching groups, we do this exercise twice during the group, once in the beginning, once at the end, where we have them write letters to their ADHD. So the exercise is called Dear ADHD. And so it's like your homework for next session is don't do the homework. We're going to come to group and we're going to write together.
Nice.
Right. And then we share. And what's so I just love about it is like everyone feels like they could have written the letter that they just heard.
Mhm.
And I just think that sense of, oh, it's not just me,
Yes.
is like why I'm in love with group and why I
Yes.
only do group work.
Yes.
Because it's like when I think on a one-on-one, there's this basis I think to think, oh, they're just being nice.
Mhm.
Or there's this like feeling like, oh, it's just maybe they say they understand and they say this is normal.
Mhm.
But like maybe they're
Mhm.
just saying that to make me feel better.
Mhm.
When you hear other people, a whole bunch of other people
Oh, yes.
saying the same kinds of things, it's like, oh, that is feels like me. And so it's so especially in the queer space, well, I'll just speak for myself as a bi guy. I we need more like
Yes.
representation. You know,
Yes.
you ever seen the show Madam Secretary?
Only a few times, so I won't remember characters if you name them,
So the
except for Taya, because
the
she's hot.
secretary's assistant, I think, whatever his title was, comes out as bisexual, and I was so excited, and it was the most awkward coming out that he did on the show to on his character, and I loved it, and I was like, oh my
Oh.
gosh, it's like but that's like, how often do we see that? Not
Yeah.
often at all.
Yeah. No, no, you're right. You're right. We don't, and we need more. Absolutely. It's I stole that idea, by the way, because once you told me that you did this letter thing, I'm like, of course I should do the letter. So I was running an RSD group, and for the record, I'm not a fan of the label RSD, and we challenge it within the RSD group. We challenge the label of dysphoria because is it dysphoric if we're actually receiving actual rejection and trauma? Like, so we start restructuring that and kind of breaking it down. Nonetheless, in this RSD group, we wrote a letter to our ADHD, RSD and trauma, you know, and I would say 80% of people came back and said, it's not that they want to get rid of it. Like they don't want to get rid of what makes them so colorful and all the feeling and the high highs and the low lows and even the crying on the bathroom floor days. We just want to be understood. We want to feel safe. We want to feel understood. We want to feel, you know, free to fully embody our experience, and have accommodations would be awesome, and maybe even celebrate, you know, our differences. But very few people wanted to, if given the choice, get rid of their ADHD. RSD was a little bit different because that caused a lot more angst, and then trauma, interestingly, some people even said because of the lessons and the resilience, there were so many gifts, even though they probably wouldn't if they had their choice experience that specific
Yeah.
trauma. It was interesting. It was a good conversation.
As you were saying that, something that I kind of forgot that I used to think about a lot, and that was this idea of, like, I often had wished that I was either gay or straight,
Mm-hmm.
like, this, sort of straddling the both sort of worlds when the societal expectation is monogamy. Um, I always felt just really hard. I don't
Yeah.
know if I think that much of like, think that way as much anymore, but it's definitely it was a recurring thought that I used to have quite a bit.
Yeah. I've sometimes feel frustrated and wish I wasn't a white hetero-facing woman. I feel like it doesn't represent my heart and soul, like my outward appearance. I should be a muppet. Should definitely be
I can jump on that. That's,
a muppet.
are you a woman or a Muppet?
I know you. That's a line for that movie,
I know.
yeah. I try really hard to
I
queer
love
myself
that.
up. I go to my stylist and I'm just like, "Just could you just help me look queer?" And the last time I went, it was kind of funny because I said, "Can you do like an asymmetrical thing?" And she's like, "I don't know. Are you ready for it?" I'm like, "Yes, I'm ready for it." Because we had done colors and all these things. Anyhow, for those that are watching the video, will be like, that didn't work because it didn't. It was almost like my hair rejected it. They're like, no, not gonna do that. Like I'm just something about my outward shell is not allowing me to like fully look the way I feel. It's a resistance that I haven't figured out yet.
I can relate to that. My,
Yeah.
way I feel, I have, like, a full head of hair. You know, I when I was in college, I had dreadlocks.
Oh, fun. You miss them.
I had curly hair and they just turned into dreadlocks, and I missed it because you can do fun stuff with it, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
It's now I just kinda I don't know. I have, I guess, somewhat of a queer dad bod.
Queer dad bod. What does
Yeah,
that mean?
like a dad
But
bod-y.
what makes it queer? There's like,
I don't know, my colorful patterned shirts.
yeah, color.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
I made a big commitment this year to get more fun shirts.
Cool.
'Cause
Cool.
had all, like, the normal kinda dress-ish kinda shirts for so long, and I'm just like, it
Wow.
just felt like a costume. I never really felt like myself in it.
I hear you on it. That's what I was thinking with the gender constructs and norms. Like if dressing like a woman is something related to bras and high heel shoes or tights or pantyhose or underwear, I'm not in. I don't want it. I don't want it. And even just sitting, like I never, well, fortunately for Zoom, but like I don't do the leg crossing thing. It doesn't feel good to me. It feels very like closed off for me. And so yeah, it's interesting how not womanly or feminine I feel until I'm with my kids, and then I'm like, oh, I'm all woman. I'm like, but it's just interesting in different
So you think
arenas.
because this is also true very much with our neurodivergence, is that our um the setting like that we are in like
Yeah.
impacts how our our brain expresses its stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I like you so much, Eric.
The feeling is very mutual.
Thank you. Thank you. I promised short episodes, so I lied.
Well, if it makes you feel any better on so this week we released episode 450 on ADHD Rewired.
Yay! Congratulations.
On episode 1, that episode where you tell people what the podcast will be about.
Mhm.
Well, first it wasn't even going to be an interview show. It just kind of like organically evolved into that. But I said that the episodes will be somewhere between 25 to 35 minutes.
Mhm.
I don't think I've ever had an episode under 40 minutes.
I could see my solo episodes being short, like I said, the 10 to 15 minute. And then maybe if I interview somebody I don't like, but no, if I'm having fun. So I'll need to pay my podcast team more if they're listening, because they do the whole transcription and time blocking and all. And I never look at that stuff, but apparently neurotypical people do. And maybe they should listen to this because they might learn something. But yeah. So yes, I wish I could sing us off with the rainbow song right now. That's how excited I am that you were here. And
Why
I
don't
also promise, what's that?
why don't you?
I will. Okay, I will in a second. I did promise also that I wouldn't do a whole bunch of like sales pitchy stuff, but I should probably let people know that they should subscribe and share. And if they want to reach out to me about coaching or group coaching, pashamarlow.com. And then how could they reach and follow you, Eric?
So best way to do that is ADHDrewired.com. You can find our podcasts. We have a whole podcast network. So we have a couple other podcasts that are under our network, including Hacking Your ADHD, ADHD Diversified, ADHD Essentials, and we're going to be launching 2 more in the next couple months here. Which we're
Cool.
about. Yeah.
I love how supportive you are of other podcasters.
I love the medium. Like I just love podcasting. I love long form content.
Yeah.
Although it is funny how often I get someone that will email me and be like, "Do you not understand ADHD? Your episodes are so long."
Could you talk slower? Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I get it. Here's a how to ADHD, and
Yes.
here's the short stuff.
This is why I do TikTok. By the way, on TikTok at your neuroqueer coach on TikTok and Instagram, like 1 to 3 minutes.
That's
It's
great.
hard. It's hard.
Short is so hard.
Way
So
hard.
hard.
Mhm.
So yeah, ADHDrewired.com. So you can find out about the podcast. You can find out about our coaching groups. We have a virtual co-working community called Adult Study Hall. So you can find
Awesome.
all of those things there.
So good. If you liked this episode, share it and review it and tell somebody about it and pass it along, because we're trying to get the word out, the neuroqueering word. We're trying to get the word out that there are safe spaces for neurodivergent queer people, which
And
I
I
love.
would love for your listeners, if you know a bi guy who's maybe isn't fully comfortable with being out, like, do not call me.
Oh.
Just so the podcast listeners know, Pasha mouthed to me with the phone gesture. Call me.
the 80s phone, by the way,
Yeah.
not
Are
the
people
cell
of
phone.
this generation going to know what this even means?
They don't even know.
Thumb and pinky thing. Share this, like specifically share this episode with
Yes.
them, because if what I am saying here, it's, I mean, for all I know, this is just my experience and nobody can relate to it.
Oh yeah, they can
Anything
relate.
that's not the case.
Yes.
So if you can give someone that gift of, hey, like, listen to this might help you. Share that with that person.
I love that. Yes. Yes. I very much believe that the bisexual community, and specifically bi guys, will very much appreciate everything you said today. Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
Pasha,
Thank you, Eric. And thank you everybody for listening. I can't wait to talk to you in the next episode. We'll I don't know what it'll be about, but it's gonna be really interesting.
It's gonna be awesome. So good. So good.
All right. Thanks for
Thank you so
neuroqueering,
much.
everyone.
Love it.
Bye.